Okay, we'll call to order this evening's meeting of the City Council. Wait. Excuse me? We'll call to order the meeting. No, he's not. Roll call.
Mayor Brinkman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallman.
Here.
Councilmember Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Cernanik.
Present.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor. And Councilmember Valdez.
Present.
Okay, will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think I'm doing
Okay, Council, any changes to this evening's agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved as is. Minutes. Need approval for the minutes from the September 10th study session. Any changes? Okay, seeing none, those are approved. 9/11 study session, these are both the budget sessions. Any changes? Seeing none, those are approved. Pardon me?
No, we're good.
9/18, regular City Council meeting. Any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, those are approved. And then the study session from September 25th. Any changes? Okay. Those are approved. Moving to comments and reports. City Manager?
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Okay. And Councilmember Beckman.
Just want to mention that candidate spouse Ann Romney was in town today at Hudson Gardens. I think it's good whenever Littleton is able to get its name out there as being a place that is worth coming to and presenting its best. And I'm sure Hudson Gardens looked very good on the news coverage. The meeting was outside. The weather was beautiful, and there was a crowd there, and it was certainly Littleton hospitality.
Thank you. Phil?
Just two items. One, to mention that Scott Murphy, the superintendent of schools, made a great presentation at the South Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce last Friday afternoon, and certainly talked about the awards and what is happening in our school district. And then the second item is in the context of the Denver Regional Council of Government in consideration of the potential for traffic disruption tomorrow. The Metro Vision Issues Committee is meeting that would be scheduled for tomorrow is canceled.
Thank you. Jerry?
Thank you. Just a reminder that the Friends Craft Fair will be Saturday at Kittering Park from 9 to 4.
Rain or shine.
Rain or shine, and just bring a jacket. Let's see, it's supposed to be over 300 booths there and lots of food and all that. So check out the museum and Lakeway there as well. Also, this is a question for our city manager. I need clarification, if not now, maybe later, on the city council oversight for liaisons, responsibilities for boards and commissions.
We have it scheduled for a study session for the council to talk about your protocols and legislative rules next Tuesday. There's a set of proposed changes. We'll be passing that out to you for your consideration. Whatever direction you provide us at that study session, we will then put on for the October 16th council meeting for adoption. Any modifications that come from that. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
I appreciate it. And last but not least, also the outreach meeting that was last Tuesday, I thought was very good. I think many of you were there for almost all of it. There were a lot of good questions, and there one in particular really is one that I recall, maybe you all heard it too, is one of the citizens had commented that one of their decisions to move to Littleton was due to the fact that Littleton has a relative conservative future debt obligations, and that the city that he and his family had moved from, that city's near future obligations are quite high and may be difficult to pay, and that was a concern to him. So I think it's great for the city of Littleton to remain where we are, and let's keep it up. I think previous councils before us have done a good job, and I think we'll continue to do the same.
Thank you. Thanks. Bruce?
Attended the
Littleton Public School Board meeting on September 27th last week. The one item I'll mention that I thought was interesting, they usually come up with a variety of interesting topics, but one in particular was a Bring Your Own Technology to School program that Arapahoe High School is running. They're moving towards an open source environment with a lot of community-based tools for learning. And the thing that struck me about all this is that it just, when you start looking at some of the tools and the attributes of what they're doing, it's so far afield from the kind of stuff that we did when we were in high school or junior high or whatnot. So it's just fascinating. But a big key element of what their protocols are is trying to teach kids for a 21st century work environment. So the skills that they're working on with a lot of this kind of programs is really oriented towards trying to make sure the kids have a skill set that will help them excel in today's world, which I think is outstanding. The kudos to the Littleton Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association. I had a conversation with Englewood Mayor Randy Penn on Saturday, who said that a number of folks from the Alumni Association came out to support a fundraiser they had for Officer Jeremy Bittner, who was, of course, killed on the line of duty this past summer. But he specifically mentioned the Littleton Citizens Police Alumni Association was real instrumental in participating, so thanks very much to that. Mayor Brinkman and I attended a U.S. Conference of Mayors forum, I guess, panel discussion this morning. I'll let you talk about that, but it was a real treat to go in and hear what some of the creative stuff that's going on at the local level, nationally, when there's such dysfunction, certainly at the federal and state levels. And lastly, heard at lunch that Nancy Stauff, the executive director of the Town Hall Arts Center, is apparently resigning her post and is going to be pursuing other opportunities closer to home in Denver come November, and theoretically then we'll be looking for a new executive director of Town Hall Arts Center. But she leaves the organization in an exceedingly strong position, so we wish her well and we'll look forward to her replacement. Thank you.
Thanks. Peggy?
Just a general comment to thank the staff for the things that they do. Not always perfect, but lots of good work. And I particularly want to single out the street folks who have been doing sidewalks and other repairs and so forth, and just today got a super repair done on a god-awful, sidewalk near Moody Elementary School, which is going to make it so much safer for the people to walk their kids to school, because it was really badly broken up. So thank you particularly for that.
Okay. A couple of things, Council. I have received an email, actually just within a half hour, from it's Brothers Redevelopment, and about a year ago they approached and they had a CDBG grant that they had designated to serve the Littleton community, and what the grant intention is to work with mobile homeowners on repairs. And since we have two mobile home parks, both quite large in the world of mobile home parks these days, as they tend to shrink, they're shrinking, we were chosen, and they were able to, the grant total was $12,500, and they were able to serve 9 owners on all manner of repairs, and it can be replacing a furnace or simply even a window or something like that. But they qualify on an income level, and this is here to help them with that, which obviously is a benefit to the community because it keeps homes in better repair and not disrepair. They have, due to the success of that, they want to apply and have been encouraged by Arapahoe County to apply for a $25,000 grant that they would use over the next 12 months, and they want to apply that to, again, the Littleton community. The grant is due on the 29th, and the grant requires a letter of support from the municipality they would serve. So unless there is any great consternation to that, I will ask staff to prepare that letter. He does have a draft here that we can use, and then I would sign that and send that off. And then if that $25,000 grant did come to us, it would be used at Meadowwood and Woolhurst trailer or mobile home parks. Any problems? Okay. And then just to tag on to what Mayor Pro Tem Solomon mentioned, the meeting this morning, and we had mayors from Baltimore, and there was a mayor from Mesa, Arizona, mayor from Oklahoma City, and who is California? Sacramento, California, and our own mayor, Denver Mayor, Michael Hancock. And the panel was just an inspiring message. The message was that at the municipal level is really where things happen, because we are not caught in the middle of a partisan politic fight where everything stops and you hit gridlock and people are fighting for their own individual or lobbied interest, whereas at the city level, all 5 mayors, without any hesitation, it just flowed naturally off their lips, continuously commented or made remarks about it's about the people, it's about our citizens, it's about our community. And one of the things that has struck me in the last year of serving as your mayor is the relationships that I've been able to build with other mayors throughout the community. And this region is so incredibly well served by a group of leaders who are so committed to the growth and success of our region. And we really are setting a national example. It was again brought up today on how well we are working together and how cooperatively, and then to hear the other mayors from all across the country talk about how this is really where it happens. It's not happening at the federal level. We know what's happening there. It barely happens at the state level. And we are the ones that, in the end, also get what trickles down and the unfunded mandates and all of those things and the smallest parts of federal budgets, et cetera. So it was fascinating. It was absolutely inspiring to me. And the one message that they did send loud and clear was, if you are registered, if you are not registered, register. If you are registered, you need to vote and you need to be paying attention, and because things need to shift into a place of collaboration and cooperation. So it was very inspiring, and I think Bruce felt the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that is it for that. So we move to guest or to citizen appearances. We have no guest citizens scheduled for this evening, so we'll move to unscheduled. Unscheduled appearances are an opportunity for any citizen to express an opinion or ask a question regarding city services, council policies, or other matter of community concern that are not part of our scheduled agenda. Our scheduled agenda includes, I believe, 3 public hearings, 2 of which are related to the budget. One is related to, I might get this wrong. We have one for the stormwater utility fee. We have mill levy, and we have the budget. We also have a second reading on the public hearing on the Buck Center health $5,000 lease rental. I'm stating these so that if you are speaking to these, please wait until those public hearings are announced and then come down and speak to those. So if you I have 2 speakers that have signed up. I'll call them, and once they've spoken, then if anybody else has something they want to address that was not mentioned as a public hearing, please come down. First speaker, Jack Randall.
Good evening, Mayor Brinkman, council members. This Saturday, I went down and participated in that historic scavenger hunt. I didn't intend to. I went down there just to see what was going on, and they convinced me to do it, and it was a blast. I wouldn't have thought it, and I ran into Alfred Packer, who's sitting over there. It was something that was done by a private group who brought a lot of people into town. There was 150 plus that went down there, and I really thought it was well done. They brought a lot of people down there, and I would sincerely urge you to go down and participate, and I hope they do another annual one. But it was done well, and it helped downtown. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Next, Cinda, that's a mixture of Senator and Linda. Senator Linda Newell.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I wanted to come tonight and say thank you so much for the Conflict Resolution Month proclamation. Although I have gotten here at times when we have had it, but we haven't had it. I wanted to say thank you so much as a city to stand up for Conflict Resolution Month. And I talk about collaboration and cooperation. All of us know, and particularly it's ironic that it happens to be at election time. But I've been working on this for 4 or 5 years now. And it started as Conflict Resolution Day, and now in Colorado we have Conflict Resolution Month because a day isn't enough time to give attention to all of us in this room. There's not a person in this room who doesn't experience conflict at some point. And how do we address that? How do we respond to it? And how do we interact with our council members, with our legislators, but how do we act with our neighbors? How do we react and respond to the people in our workplace? If you have conflict in any of those areas at any time, Conflict Resolution Month is a month where we can just be reminded of when we have those discourses. Are they civil? Are they responsive? Are they responsible? And so I just wanted to say thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and thank you. I got your message. And thank you so much for acknowledging. This is the first year I have had every single one of the cities and towns in Senate District 26 to acknowledge it, and to actually some of them are looking at it amongst their council members and talking about it with their city staff. And 3 years it took for us to get it unanimously out of the state legislature. So talking about collaboration, who votes no on a Conflict Resolution Month resolution? I don't know. Well, actually, I do know. I remember those people. But anyway, but we're finally down to unanimous. And so I just wanted to say thank you and acknowledge the city of Littleton for acknowledging that. I would like to present to the city the October is Conflict Resolution Month in Colorado. Listen, talk, work it out, as a proud supporter to place wherever you like. And then also offer from the conflict resolution folks, we have a book that we choose every year, which is a different book. And this book is actually written by Beverly Title, who is a Boulder resident, but it's a national publication. And it's called Teaching Peace, a Restorative Justice Framework for Strengthening Relationships. And restorative justice is a process that's used a lot in the schools, also with young kids, young adults in with early crimes. I don't want to say early crimes, but small intervention crimes like graffiti and things like that. So thank you again, and I won't take up any more of your time, but I just wanted to say thank you, and may I approach to give this to you, Mayor?
Actually, you could give it to the city clerk. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Linda. Anybody else have any comments? Norm?
Thank you. Norm Brown, 6081 South Spotswood Street. I'm a regular here. I've got a question that didn't come up with the consideration of the minutes, but I see when I picked up the minutes of the September 11th and September 10th meetings, in lines 8 and 9, it's referred to as a regular meeting, a regular session.
That was a mistake.
Is it just a typo? Okay, very good. Thank you.
I have a template in Granicus, and it automatically populates it, and that was a mistake.
I suspected as much.
Sorry,
The meeting
I'll
of the
fix it.
25th says study. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Norm, even though you're a regular, I like your new hat.
Okay, is there anybody else who would like to approach council at this point? Okay, seeing no one, we will move to our consent agenda. Consent agenda are items that can be adopted by a simple motion, and any consent agenda item can be removed at the request of a council member. We have consent agenda item A, City Attorney.
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, renaming the Littleton Museum Education Orientation Room in honor of Robert McQuarrie.
Okay, just a minute, let me get to my... On August 6, 2012, the Museum Board voted unanimously to recommend renaming the Littleton Museum Educational Orientation Room in honor of the museum's founding director, the late Robert McQuarrie. In accordance with the City of Littleton's naming guidelines, Council initiated a 30-day public comment period on August 21, 2012, which ended on September 20th, 2012. During this period, one comment was received endorsing the proposal to name a space at the museum after Mr. McQuarrie.
Madam Chairman, I move for approval of consent agenda item 7A.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the naming of the Littleton Museum Education Orientation Room, Robert McQuarrie. Uh-oh, Taylor's voting. Peggy.
It's just as ghost. The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, item 8A. Kirsten?
This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, approving the refinancing of a lease purchase agreement for the Littleton Museum to produce an aggregate savings to the city and authorizing and approving the documentation relating to the refi.
Staff initiated this project and contracted with a financial advisor to review possible refinancing savings regarding the 2003 Certificates of Participation, also known as COPs, that were used to renovate the museum, construct Fire Station 12, and construct the city fleet maintenance facility for $15.4 million. A recent financial analysis calculates an estimated $900,000 to $1 million net present value savings, subject to market conditions and may change at the time of the closing transaction. On first reading, we did ask Councilmember Stallman to spend some time with the folks who put this together, all the money and numbers people, and Councilmember Stallman, if you don't mind, would you give your synopsis?
Do you want Doug to do anything?
No, I would go ahead and have you get started.
Sure. Essentially, following Finance Director Farman's presentation with the folks from Baum and Company, the investment bankers, there were a variety of sort of follow-on technical questions in terms of how the analysis was constructed. By virtue of my career background, it made sense for me to volunteer to take a look at it, which I then did. I asked Doug, and Baum was kind enough to send, the folks from Baum were kind enough to send in the spreadsheets and the analytics that they had put together, which I took a look at and then sent some Q&A back to them, and we all got on a conference call a week ago to talk through the analysis. My intent was not to do anything with respect to any of the policy orientation questions involved. It was strictly to look at the construction of the cash flows, the underlying assumptions, did the analytics progress in a logical sequence that would allow you to have confidence in the numbers given the complexity of what was going on. Not that there was any expectation of anything being irregular, but just as a second set of eyeballs from a group of people who don't do that kind of stuff for a living. Without essentially going too into the weeds on this thing, the conclusion I drew from it was I was able to replicate the net present value calculation from a cash flow perspective on the two refinancing alternatives. The structure of the COPS, in a general sense, there was some interesting revelation that I took away from it, from the conversation with the investment bankers, and that is essentially that I had originally anticipated or thought that the COPS were a stream of cash flow that an investor would buy, when in fact they are a set of sequenced maturity bonds. So in other words, you can buy a segment of the bond that matures in 2014 or 2015 or 2016, but you can't buy a slice of the entire COPS. And that answered a lot of the questions as to why the interest rate variability was included in the cash flow analysis. I think the major driver, there's really two critical drivers here. One is that, frankly, the term of the refinance is a little bit shorter. It's 1 year shorter because we're getting credit for the debt service reserve fund that is no longer required. So in so many words, we're monetizing $1.2 million of a reserve that's been sitting out there that would essentially be used for the last bond payment, if you will. So getting credit for that means the new bonds, if you will, are shorter in maturity, and that generates a big chunk of the savings. The other thing that we come to find out on this analysis is that the premium on the bonds, there's a balancing act between how many bonds we would sell, the premium we can achieve on the bonds based on the interest rate, and the resulting cash flow that the city's going to have to pay. And what we talked through was essentially the investment bankers have structured this in a way to, as best we can under the circumstances, optimize the minimal amount of cash flow based on the market conditions for the bonds, given the yields that are out there and what investors are willing to pay. Let me stop there and basically say, without, again, intending to get too deep on this, I tried to summarize it in a relatively digestible form with the memo. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But my conclusion was, I think the structure of what's being done and the cash flows resulting from the analytics is as represented, and then lends itself to allow council to consider the policy question of, do we want to refi without with taking any questions or complexity of the analysis off the table, if you will. Yeah, Phil.
So question is, whenever you're doing a refinancing of sorts, is the timing. And why now and why not later is sometimes because we can't go back and change history. With the structure of these, is there the possibility that there would be some savings that might occur if we waited until some of these enter into their call periods?
I'll defer to the experts on that. What I got in terms of the review was, we're close enough to the call period where we're getting some of those advantages now. Probably there's some potential, but the other side of that then will end up devolving into the policy question of, do you want to take advantage of the cash flow sooner than later? But let me defer to Doug and Robin and Jim.
Good evening, Doug Farman, Finance Director. Yes, I'd like to defer to our financial advisor, Robin Moore. She works with George K. Baum, as she can better identify market conditions and the environment and potential risks. Thanks, Robin.
Yeah. Good evening. The answer is maybe. If you wait, there is...
Stand closer to the mic. Thank you.
Here. So where you are now, Councilmember Stallman did really a fantastic job understanding the structure and even just answering that question, representing what happens if you wait. So the bonds are technically what they call callable or refinanceable at the end of 2003. So you do have a little period of time between now and December 2003. What's driving... 13. These are 2003 ones. What drives the savings? So right now, you heard there was this range of savings depending on where the market is at the time we price the COPs and lock in the interest rate, somewhere between $900,000, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. And what drives that is the interest rate environment in the municipal bond market. And right now, interest rates in the bond market are essentially at the lowest rates we've seen really ever. And so because those rates are so low, you're getting such a large savings amount. So what that savings equates to on a dollar basis is a percentage, and what we call a present value savings number. So typically we like to see 3 to 5%, closer to probably the 5% present value savings. So that means 5% of the outstanding par amount of the bonds is represented as savings. You're at about 9%, which is a fantastic number. As you get closer to the call date, you do potentially lose what I think you're referring to as what we call negative arbitrage. So because those bonds are not technically refinanceable until 2013, they're set aside in an account. And because short-term interest rates are so low and they're earning interest until you pay off the old bondholders in 2013, the difference between what you can make on those bonds and what you are making is that negative arbitrage. And that does eat into the savings. And where you are right now, it's about $200,000 of negative arbitrage. And that reduces the savings that you have. The risk that you have is if you wait and interest rates go up, you most likely would be in a position where you have less savings in the future than you would have now. So it's a guess. I mean, no one can say that rates are going to stay at the absolute low level they are. We've done analysis. We haven't done it on this COP, and we could very easily do so. But we've done a lot of analysis where we look at a bond issue and say, this is where the savings is, this is where rates are, this is how much negative arbitrage we have. If we wait, rates only have to go up. And in this interest rate environment, it's usually 20, 30, 40 basis points. And if you think 100 basis points is 1%, and then you're worse off than if you had just done the bond issue today. I don't have that number specifically for this.
How hard would it be to calculate that?
Not very hard. We can certainly do that. I can't do it off the top of my head, but we can certainly do it.
Because, that 200,000 starts to become, not insignificant dollar amount.
Sure.
My mortgage is 30-year mortgage is on an adjustable rate at 2.1% now. So every month I kind of say, are you sure this is going to be enough? Is the stage I'm at.
Sure. It's a hard thing to grasp. When do you do it?
I understand interest rate changes. Who's the advisor on the crystal ball with interest rate changes?
The answer is none of us know where it's going. Municipal bond interest rates are driven, when the world is as it is right now, where all the uncertainty in Europe, uncertainty domestically, anything that's bad for the economy is typically good for municipal bonds, meaning it drives rates down. The other feature that's important for all of us in pricing bonds is the supply and demand feature. So if there's low interest rates, but a lot of supply. So if we think back in 2009 and 2010 when there were the Build America bonds, we saw a ton of bond issues. Colorado in 2010 when there was 60-61-101, when everyone was worried that we could never sell bonds ever again, there was a ton of supply. And even though rates were low, it drove rates up because there was so much supply and only so many investors. So that's a dynamic that we also pay attention to. So right now rates are low, but supply is also low. So it's all converging together to give us this great interest rate environment. And none of us know where the savings is going to be next year, where rates are going to go. We do sort of use as this gauge, where are they now and what's the savings now, and are we pretty happy with it? And that's it's a phenomenal level where you are. Could it get better? Possibly, but it could also get worse.
I guess one of the things I'd like to hear is what would the interest rate move need to be, and maybe a little bit of the history on what would happen along that supply-demand curve to kind of make sure we're doing the right stuff.
Sure. I mean, we can certainly do that. I mean, I will say we did it for a bond issue just yesterday that has a call date out to 2006. So yours is or 2016. We're forgetting what year we're in. 2016, so yours are callable in 2013. And interest rates only had to move 150 basis points higher. And we did the analysis that you're talking about, and rates were higher over 90-something% of the time. I forget the exact number. So the overwhelming likelihood was that rates would be higher. And that's
And an interest rate move in something about 12 months is a little bit different than something in about 4 years.
Sure. But the number would probably be a lot lower. But we certainly can do that analysis for you. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Peggy?
So if we get into this and the picture looks worse, I mean, this looks good, right?
Sure.
Then what?
then you don't do the bond issue. So you have up until the morning that we price.
Okay, so, but in our motion, we're just saying refinance, but it would be contingent on what we're expecting?
So you're delegating parameter. You're setting general parameters and then delegating the authorization to enter the bond market. And I believe you're delegating it to the president. And so what that means is you're saying go ahead, and if the savings, so you have certain parameters in your ordinance, and you're saying that the savings has to be a certain level before you execute the bond issue. And then even within that, that's a minimum hurdle. You can set for yourselves a higher level. And up until the morning we price bonds before we get into the bond market or the COP market, you can say, we don't want to do this, and you just don't do it.
Then a question in this document on page 3, section 2D, the terms of the site lease shall not extend beyond 2040. Why 2040 when we're talking 2023?
Tom, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to take I can take a stab at it, but the bond counsel's here, Tom Pellet's from Coutak-Rock, so we'll let him respond to that.
Can you repeat that question? I was asking Tom some questions about this.
In the refinancing parameters in section 2D, it says the term of the site lease shall not extend beyond 2040. Why that year?
Sure, and my name's Tom Pellets. I'm a bond attorney with the law firm of Coutak-Rock, bond counsel to the city. The reason that the site lease goes longer than the city's lease term is that's the security for the certificate holders. This is a non-appropriation obligation of the city. It is a lease financing, and so the city in any particular year could decide to non-appropriate. In the event that that happened, the certificate holders would need some period of time to try and recoup their initial investment in the COPS. And so that's what usually it's a rule of thumb that the period of the site lease runs twice the term of the lease. So we just put 2040 as an outside parameter. In all likelihood, it will be twice the term of the city's lease. So if the city's lease is 12 years, it would run for 24 years. But it's just there for security.
Thank you.
Bruce? I have a question for Doug. Doug, another piece of this was in the first reading we talked about alternatives A and B, and in your communication on the fiscal impacts, you discussed the selection that was made, and it's reflected also in the information that Bruce looked at. I think it would be important to mention that now in the public hearing, or during this hearing.
Yeah, well, in the first reading, we did have two options, and we had a recommendation for the option that's before you this evening. But the other option was a more level payment, which created just a slightly more advantageous net present value and a little bit better interest rate. But we decided on the recommendation before you tonight because there's more upfront annual lease savings in the first 3 to 4 years of the lease. And in the end, the net present value savings is so close to the level payment option that is why staff is recommending the option before you this evening. But we did look at a few of those different options.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, Jerry?
So Doug, at the end of the 24 years, we're looking at a $250,000 less in payments?
This lease would run to 2022. The current 2003 COPS runs to 2023, so it's actually a year shorter than the current term.
In the overall savings?
And then the net present value savings, if you look at the net present value dollars, it's between $900,000 and $1 million, depending on where they get priced at in the market. But it is roughly an annual average net present value savings of, I think it was about $85,000 a year over that time period. And that's in net present value dollars.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, this is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. And we have one person signed up to speak. Tom Christopite.
Tom Christopite. 714 West Elati Circle, Littleton, 80120. Also Vice Chairman of the Littleton Building Authority. I only make that as a point of disclosure. I don't speak for the Building Authority tonight. I have two big concerns. First of all,
Tom, I'm going to need you to speak into the mic. Thank you.
thank you. All this newfangled stuff. It's a good idea to do the refunding. It hasn't been proper, it's a minor technical point, but it's called an advance refunding, not refinancing. The building's already financed and paid for. You're refunding the bonds, and it's pretty much a banking operation that you're talking about in this situation. So I say it is a good idea, but it's not a good idea to do it this year. You were just talking, Peggy asked the question about timing and criteria in the ordinance. I'll get to that in a minute. And you've just heard some other discussion related to that. So let me review briefly the main point of this year or next year. The cost, you just heard it from your advisor, of the doing it this year. The negative arbitrage, it's not $200,000, it's exactly $234,359.95, their calculation. So it's not 200, that's rounded way down. So my point is, when you do this advanced refunding 1 year early, you issue bonds, you put the money in escrow, and you tell the escrow agent, when you can call the bonds next year, please use this money to pay those bonds. However, you have issued those bonds to get $10 million at a higher rate than it's earning in interest while it's sitting there. And that cost is $234,360. If you wait till next year and refund them at the time they're callable, you don't have to pay that. Now, you can put this savings and that savings and do all kinds of banking manipulation, but you can't get rid of that cost. It's in there if you do it this year. If you do it next year, it's cheaper. So that's a big number in your budget. So my main point is, don't call the cops this year, call them next year for that savings reason. Now let me talk about the Littleton Building Authority. We had a meeting that was called early on the week of the 14th. Friday was the 14th, so about Monday we got a call for a meeting. We met on Friday at 3 o'clock. There were a couple of things that were unusual about that meeting. First of all, I've been on that board 30 years. We've always had a recording and a secretary. There was no recording. There was no secretary. I understand from the attorney that the meeting was posted as a public meeting. So I assume it was open to the public, and I don't think I'm breaking any confidences by telling you what I'm about to tell you. And there was also no banker. Nobody to answer our questions. I had requested the banker, and your city attorney decided that wasn't necessary. You can ask, she can speak for herself if you want an explanation. So I say, no recording, no secretary, no banking, no kidding. How are we going to do business? How can we get questions answered? So, frankly, I was a little bit suspicious. I thought, what's going on here? Why is this going on? Now, we had a motion to pass that was drafted. And it basically said that we acknowledge the purchase option. I'm sorry. The purchase option, and there's some legalities there. The building authority moves to affirm the delivery of the deed because if it goes from us to the trustee, there's a change in the deed of trust. And the authority take any action, the officers, it directs the officers to take any actions necessary to comply with the law.
And finally, it moves to direct the 2003 trustee to call the outstanding COPS on December 1st, 2013. That's just what I recommended. You're doing it 1 year early, plus a couple months. So the building authority met, and frankly, it took about 10 minutes to get a motion, and it took 20 minutes to get a second, and 5 minutes to vote. The reason it took so long on the second is nobody knew what we were doing. It was not clear, and it still isn't. And it didn't really ask us to do anything about the COPS. It was all about a lease, but there was reference to it. There was also no documentation. We didn't have the documents then. During the course of that conversation, though, Michael is there, and Kirsten is there. Did I say that right, Kirsten?
Kirsten.
Thank you. Sometimes I get my tang tangled. So we really asked them, why are we doing this? Tell us what's behind the deal. The explanation we got was that we had received a notice from the federal government that the police needed new radios, and that the cost of the new radios was about $1 million, and that somehow that $1 million was going to be included in this refunding. I said, strange. That doesn't sound right to me. It bothered me since the 14th. So we didn't, in deference to the city, frankly, the building authority passed it, said, well, okay, if that's the motion you want, and it's about recommending it more than anything else, a date, it's okay, so we passed it unanimously, 3-0. So one of my questions really is, is this police money in this deal, or isn't it?
Tom, we're probably not going to engage in conversation. We will report an answer back to you, though.
I didn't quite understand.
We will get an answer back to you. We're not going to have a public debate right now. And I know it's a public hearing. We want to hear what you have to say. But unless staff, these are questions that I think we can have responses back to you, unless staff is willing to come forth at this point. That's our protocol is not to.
Maybe
Michael?
This one is, on that latter question, the answer is no. This is not an issue of radios for the cops. This is an issue of refinancing and two options before the council. Where do you want to refinance on a straight basis and just get net savings, or do you, based on overall capital needs, do you want to refinance and try to keep some of the dollars in the next couple of years that we would have spent out of the capital fund in arrears, essentially, so that we can use them for other capital needs? The police radios were an example of what you might use those for. There are, as council is aware, numerous capital needs before us.
I think I understand the answer. Regarding the ordinance itself, there's a kind of a technicality about that, and Peggy hinted at it. She had a good point. And the issue, as I understand what Peggy was talking about, is that you've got on the oh, by the way, I'm looking at my notes here, and this is kind of out of sequence. But Bruce, I must say that this statement, the complexity of analytics underlying the policy question, is an absolutely wonderful phrase. But I don't think you'll ever hear the end of it. Complexities of the analytics underlying the policy question.
Wait till we get to the sewer plant.
I understand. Nice try.
Thank you.
So, Peggy was talking about the ordinance, and in section 2, ABCD, there's some criteria called refinancing parameters. But you've just heard from your experts that the amount of savings is unknown. Their estimate is from $1 million to $900,000. That's the current numbers about that. However, they said it's subject to the marketplace. Well, the marketplace is actually only 10 days away. You're supposed to close this thing, if you keep your schedule, on the 17th. So it isn't going to change much between then and then. So whatever those numbers are, that's... Now, I have a financial advisor, too. I called up some real smart guys and asked them about it. And there were a couple of problems. One of them was the assumptions on the NPV calculations about the rates that various funds are going to earn seemed to be quite high. Another assumption was that the bonds, or pardon me, the COPs, will carry the city's rating. It's probably going to be the rating at least one notch down because they're not, as you know, an obligation of the city. So there's really not much behind that bond, that COP, except the property, which is a problem. So those numbers are probably high, and in conclusion of that calculation, the NPV is probably too high. I suggest the council determine what's a good number. You just heard your expert say it's going to save about $85,000 a year as proposed. Well, $85,000 in the $50 million, is that right, about general fund, around $50 million? You know, that's not a real big deal.
$9 million.
But what if it's only $40,000? What if it's half that? So I suggest you amend the ordinance and decide what the deal is, like selling stock. I'll sell it if it's 60, but I won't sell it if it's 59. You can surely understand that. That's what you're doing. Get a number and make sure that that parameter includes a net present value. Finally, if you're thinking about doing the police radio, whatever your strategy is, and however you can mix it up into a fund, my real answer was, tell the feds to wait till we get the money. I mean, you know, they ask you to do something. You don't have to snap to and do it right away. They don't do things like that. And I can see Bruce squirming just a little bit, so maybe he knows how to do that. And also, my last point is, if you're going to put some other kinds of considerations about capital equipment, police radios, or tires, or whatever it is, disclosure, disclosure, disclosure. You've all talked when you campaigned about transparency. The public needs to know every dime, the way this thing works. So to give them a shot at that, and to give you a chance to explain it, I invite you all to come to the pub later this month on the 18th, the day after you close this bond, if you close it, and if you approve it. Sometimes I can kind of hear a train coming down the track, so I think I know what you might do. But in any case, if it gets closed, please bring the closing papers to the pub, and I invite all of you to come and answer questions to the public, because the cops have been a subject of some discussion ever since we funded the museum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing, and I need a motion.
Before a motion, could I ask a few questions, or a couple questions?
Well, we have discussion. You can do it in discussion. Okay.
Well, I move the proposed ordinance of the City of Littleton refinancing the 2003 outstanding lease purchase be approved on second reading.
Second.
Okay, council discussion. Phil.
Yes. My question is, I'm trying to think about this simply. The negative arbitrage is an additional cost, and as I would look at it, it's the cost to have an option to lock in potentially an interest rate on the new bonds. And so my question is that something which we're actually doing? And the amount that's, explain the amount that's actually credited on what's held in escrow, using Tom's term, until the actual refinancing date of 2013, and what that's going to cost us. Can we get that a little bit clearer so I know what is actually the variables that we're having, what we're actually locking in, so that our ability to know what our savings is, because I'm going to probably put it a friendly amendment that says we need to have a range of savings for this to move forward. Understood the question? I take it, Robin?
I think so. So what you're asking is what you're locking in on the day of pricing. So you're locking in all of your interest rates, including
both the crediting and the cost.
It's essentially an offset. So when we talk about the present value savings number, so that was a fair point that we should know because we're very close to pricing. These numbers that we're talking about were actually run back in late August, and we wanted to keep them consistent from council meeting to council meeting. So we will continue to update these and give you updates if you like. But these are actually August numbers. We have pushed back the pricing date and the closing date, so that's why I was a little vague about the actual negative arbitrage. Since we're pushing it back a month, you're 1 month closer to when you can technically call the bond. So it might be a little bit lower than that $230,000. But you're locking in an interest rate, and you're locking in a present value savings, and that present value savings has already incorporated the negative arbitrage. So that $900,000 essentially is already offsetting the $200,000 or $230,000 or whatever the number is of negative arbitrage. And that negative arbitrage, it's sort of a real dollar loss, but it's a paper dollar loss. It's what you could have earned versus what you are earning.
I understand.
And so on the day of pricing, you will know absolutely what that number is. You will know absolutely what your savings number is to a penny. Now that we're closer to pricing, we can update numbers as often as you like, so you can see exactly what that present value savings number is. And again, that number, whether it's $900 or $800 or $1 million, will already be inclusive of the negative arbitrage and all the costs associated with issuing the COPs.
Okay, Robin, the follow-on question is, if the $900,000 to $1 million net present value savings was determined back in August, what's the range today?
We haven't updated numbers. We kept them consistent, and I haven't seen interest. Did I have them last week? I just thought we just updated the.
I didn't bring those with me. We did update those numbers last week, and they were very similar to the ones on the paper here before you. I don't recall the negative arbitrage number, but the net present value savings, the interest rate was about a point lower than the 2.33% that we're showing here tonight. So it was so close. I didn't add those numbers in the packet because I knew they would be fluctuating between now and pricing. But they were very, very similar to the numbers here. I just do not recall the negative arbitrage amount.
Okay. Then the next question is, how much does everyone sweat if we say we only want to go forward with this if our net present value savings is $900,000 or more?
It's always your prerogative to come up with a number, and I think you should. I think it's the right thing to do. We set those numbers with a lot of cushion in the ordinance, but it's completely up to you to set $900,000 or $800,000. You know, 900 is a fantastic number if you hit it. You know, you always have to question if it's 890. Do you wish you had gone forward? But it's completely up to you as to what you set as that threshold.
I'm hearing no sweat, so I'd like to offer an amendment.
Well, let's. Do we want to have some more discussion?
I'm open to that. I just wanted to put.
Okay, let's do that, and then hold your thought there, Phil. Any other discussion, Peggy?
Yes, I have a question. So if we refinance these the way we're talking, will we be able to call those before 2023 if it's to our advantage?
We can potentially put a call date in. So the way the tax code lays out these refundings is you get one opportunity over the entire life of the COPs to refinance in advance of the call date. And once you've done that, so if you refinance in advance of the call date, you then can only refinance the next issue, so the Series 2012 or Series 2013, whenever we do this refinancing. Then you have to wait until the actual call date. And typically, COPs and bonds have a 10-year call, which means we probably wouldn't have a call. We can look at having a 7 or 8 year call, which would give you the opportunity to refinance again in 7 or 8 years, but you wouldn't have a lot of bonds outstanding, so the savings wouldn't be very large. I mean, you're only going to have maybe a couple $1 million of bonds left, depending on which structure you go forward with.
So I have to say, I'm not a financial guru like a couple of the folks on council, nor as Mr. Chris Pite seems to be. So I'm having a little difficulty understanding what he said about we really can't call these until 2013, and here we are now.
So the way this works is you are, from the city's perspective, once you refinance these COPs and you close them, all you see is the new issue. So all you see is the new lower interest rates, kind of like refinancing your house mortgage. You lock in a new rate and you pay the lower rate. But what's going on behind the scenes is that because the COPs are not technically refinanceable, when you sell these COPs, and we'll use a round number of $10 million, that goes into an escrow account, and it's backed by U.S. government AAA-rated securities, and that escrow is paying out the old COP holders. So the old investors still are getting their payment, so they get an interest payment in June and a principal and interest payment in December. They still get that until 2013. You are not making the payment, though. The escrow account at the bank is making the payment, and the escrow is earning interest. So that we fund the escrow in an amount sufficient to repay the old bonds, and then it's earning interest. And when we're talking about this negative arbitrage, you can earn, the federal government lays out, and the tax code lays out how much interest you can earn, and it's based on a yield computed from the old bonds. And because interest rates were higher, you can earn an amount that's higher than what you're earning now, because yields on the short term of the yield curve, so if you think about short-term rates, are so low. So you're not earning as much as you potentially could be earning, and the difference between what you can be earning and what you are earning is that negative arbitrage. But the escrow account earning this interest is paying out the old COP holders, the old bond holders, until December 1st, 2013, at which point they get paid off. So if you're an investor and you gave the city of Littleton your money, you get your money back. And then, again, from the time you close this new issue, all the city sees is the new issue. So you're paying interest based on this lower interest rate. But because you're funding the escrow and you're technically refinancing in advance of that 2013 date, it's called an advance refunding.
So why really then not just wait until 2013?
Because rates could go up. And if rates go up, then you have less savings than you do now.
But then they could go down.
Yes, they could, although we've never seen rates lower than where they are today. So the overwhelming likelihood is if they're going to move in a direction, they'd probably move up.
So they could still be as low as, they could go up and come back down. They could go all over the place.
They could, absolutely. They could. We've been saying they've been going up for a few years, and they essentially have stayed at pretty low levels. They absolutely could. The reality is it's a guess, and none of us know. So we say potentially we like where savings is right now, and we want to lock it in. And then anything else is just a risk that you might never hit the $900,000 again. I mean, it's just a possibility that rates go up enough and they keep ticking up, and that negative arbitrage gets eaten into pretty quickly, which means that the savings potentially could be lower than $900,000. So anything moving forward is just a risk. We only know it's what we see in front of us in terms of interest rates, and these are really attractive savings levels, which is why I think initially it was brought to staff's attention that it might be time to look at the refinancing.
Bill?
What's the discount rate at which the net present value of savings is calculated?
I think it was 2.71.
It's the bond yield. It's the average of the bond yield.
2.17.
Let me know when I can make them.
And one other point, if you don't mind, the question was raised about the rating, and we haven't brought that up yet, but the bond yields that we've been running are based on the rating on the transaction, the rating on the COPs. And so the comment was absolutely correct that there's a general obligation rating that's given to cities, and if you don't have GO bonds, it's your implied general obligation rating. And because these are an annual appropriation structure, meaning the city every year has to go into the budget and say we are making our debt service payments and maybe we're not making them, you get brought down one level. And so we worked with Doug and his staff and have great news that you retained your AA- rating with a stable outlook, and that's just phenomenal, particularly in this market. You know, we see a lot of cities getting downgraded or having a lot of commentary around their outlook. So you can have a stable outlook, you can have a negative outlook. So the rating on this COP is AA-, which is the interest rates that we've been using. But congratulations, that's a fantastic rating. You should be really proud. It's based on the management of the city and all the things that you make decisions about. So that was great news.
Bruce?
Well, go ahead, Doug.
Oh, I'm sorry, Doug.
I'm sorry, I just want to make one comment. We did talk to Robin, I think it was 9 months to a year ago, about doing an advanced refunding at that point in time, but the negative arbitrage was just too great, and there was some net present value savings, but it just wasn't attractive enough at that point in time, so we decided to wait. So that's what we did, and that's why we are at where we are today, and we think with that over 9% savings is very attractive. And it's speculation where the rates are going to go a year from now, and that's why a lot of people are refinancing. That's why Robin is seeing a lot of refinancings and advanced refundings right now, too. So it's all a risk.
Bruce? A couple of things. We did talk about, Tom, to your comment about the discount rate, and when on the call there was agreement that in fact it was a little on the high side as far as the discount interest rate being used. That manifests itself in a couple different ways, but the 2.17 was basically, from your guys' perspective, an actual number when the data was put together back in August, if I understand what you guys told me. All right, so it's not that far afield in a general sense, and it's reflective of a portfolio of differently timed investments. But to Mr. Christopite's point, and you know, I know you wouldn't love this stuff, and I enjoy it, and Councilmember Cernanek, we get into it because it's sort of what we do. You know as well that the waiting an extra year is not a riskless proposition, because all sorts of different things can change. And so I would submit part of what we're dealing with here in the stock sales issue or example is illustrative. To me, this is really a bird in the hand proposition. If the city, the intent here is not overtly to make absolutely as much money as we can, while that would be nice, the intent is to take advantage of a market opportunity given the needs the city has for a variety of funding opportunities and an acknowledgement that there's risk involved in waiting, which I think everyone, you know, nobody's going to disagree with that. That's true.
No.
Yeah, well, and that is not an unfair point, but at what point is it sufficient for taking advantage of an opportunity? I mean, you can always sell, you know, wait to hold stock, and then the market moves against you, and I'd hate to be in a position where we've got $950,000 of present value on the table today, but it's $850 next year because of alterations in the market. The other point, though, is the discount rate goes both ways, because the way it's set up now is that the reserve fund is earning money, and we aren't, if those numbers are lower, that means there's less interest being earned on the existing reserve fund, which means technically we have to pay more. And so getting rid of that risk is something to consider as well. And the last thing I was going to mention is that there's another interplay here in terms of what the market will bear based on, the market will price these bonds at based upon the interest rate and the yield curves, and the amount of premium involved that we then put into escrow that we're using because we're selling bonds that are attractive to the market is also a fluid component of the calculation. So, again, my view of this is, yes, you can tweak the numbers back and forth, and we can argue about, does it make sense to, I wouldn't say argue, but we can have a difference of opinion, an educated opinion, in terms of whether it makes sense to pull the trigger on a deal like this today versus next week versus next month versus next year. But the truth of the matter is, at some point, you can't get the fluidity out of the process, and you're either okay with where it lands today, or you think it's demonstrably underrepresenting value, and you really should be holding off. And I guess when we get to that point in voting, I'll provide my opinion. But I think, again, the analysis, as I saw it, was not an unfair representation of the value to the city in a broad sense.
Bruce?
Just a couple comments. As I look to the financial reports that I keep up with on TV, I think one of the things that's looming out there is the potential of inflation. And inflation change would change the interest rate and make this whole thing go down the tubes, as I would understand it correctly. And I think when a community has its funds being divvied out in different areas, I think one thing that they do expect is that a conservative approach be taken. I really don't think they want poker players on city council or in the financial arena. I think what they want are people who are going to make good, solid, conservative judgments based on the world as we understand it today. And a piece of the world that I understand today is this city is facing some very difficult times over the next 3 or 4 years because our projected revenues are not going to be enough to keep up the service levels that our community's been used to unless something changes. I think we have to take this change as best we can get because we need to begin to hunker down, if not in another term, our finances over the next several years. And this is an opportunity to, within some reasonable conservative range, save some money during a time when I think we need it, rather than bet on the future of getting maybe more. But the chance of losing it could be very, very significant to us in our financial situation. They say don't bet more money than you can afford to lose, and I think right now, I don't think we want to take a what if. I think we want to take the conservative approach that's been suggested.
Anybody else?
Phil? An amendment.
Yes. I would like to amend the motion to include a minimum of net present value savings of $950,000.
Second.
And my comment on that is recognizing a number of things are fluid that are going into this. Calculations were initially developed in August. The negative arbitrage number has probably come down at least a little bit in that. Interest rates have maybe even gone a tad or so, at least firmer, if not further down in what they've done, and would like to see that recognized. I understand a little bit of what the environment can have in it as far as changes, and to underline a little bit what Councilman Beckman has said. If you wait until the absolute perfect time, as opposed to locking in some savings when you have the opportunity, you run a little bit on the greed curve as opposed to how much more it's going to make a difference. And I expect that the calculation of the difference in interest rate is going to be small enough, and I feel confident that if we can actually show to the electorate and to ourselves $950,000 net present value savings, this is the right thing to do.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, Jerry?
That's a nice amendment. And Bruce, I appreciate everything you put into this thing. I know your analysis was great, and you put a lot of time into it, obviously. So thank you very much. However, I just can't support this. I would prefer to wait till next year unless we receive additional information sometimes within the next few weeks, in the next month, before I'd be willing to act this year to change anything. That's where I stand.
Okay. Bruce, is this on the amendment?
Yeah, I was with all due respect, I understand where you're coming from, Phil. The assumption set is going to be sort of fluid. I mean, you can tweak the numbers to get to the 950. You know how these things work. And I guess if at the end of the day we got to 945, I'd hate to throw it out for 5K for the sake of an argument. So I think my preference is to let the investment bankers and Finance Director Farman get the best deal they can under the circumstances if collectively we're directionally in favor of the concept. So I'm going to vote against the amendment, but not because I don't understand where you're going with it. It's just from a practical perspective, I think.
Mr. Varman, and then City Manager Penny after.
I think I'll let Robin make a couple of points regarding the amendment.
Sure. First, in terms of costs that are expended, we did go for a rating, and that's good for approximately 3 months. You do have to pay, I don't remember, I think you have $13,000, let's say about 15. It's about $13,000, so that's a cost that you're going to have to pay because they did release the rating. And then in terms of the $950,000, again, it's your prerogative to determine the threshold, but I will say that we most likely would not recommend going into the market then until we're pretty confident we have at least over $1 million. And the reason is that we go through a pre-marketing effort, and that's the underwriter, who in this case is Piper Jaffray. They make an assessment of what they think the bonds are worth and put to the investors. But it's always the case when you go into the market that until you're in an order period, you don't know exactly. And so sometimes you have to essentially raise interest rates to get a little more interest. And once you get into that bond market and you open up an order period, you do not want to pull out of it. It really tarnishes your name in the market. So knowing that we might have to adjust interest rates and that you have a very, very high threshold for savings at $950,000, we probably wouldn't recommend getting into the market unless it's at least $1 million or $1.5 million, and we were not at $1 million. We were about just over $900,000 a few weeks ago. It probably hasn't changed a whole lot since then. So I just want to make you aware that you are above, your threshold is above where you're at, and we wouldn't even recommend going into the market unless you're pretty, give yourself a cushion above that number.
Thank you. Michael?
Two things. One, from a simple term, I just want to remind Council what we're doing here is potentially saving somewhere between $900 and $1 million of public funds, and that's why we're making this recommendation now, pursuant to Councilman Stallman's comments. We don't know what the future holds, but we can tell you that we can save somewhere between $900 and $1 million if you make this decision to move forward. And I just wanted to clarify, and I believe that Council understands, but the COPs are paid out of the capital fund. And so what we're talking about is not expending monies out of the capital fund by refinancing this. So we're reducing the capital fund expenditure for the COPs, thereby allowing the council on an annual basis to have additional funds in the capital fund. So to the citizen comments that were made, the expenditures of these fund savings, if you will come on an annual basis as part of the budget process associated with the capital fund. So there is not a direct correlation between the COP refinancing other than we will be expending less money, thereby allowing the council to have discretionary money in the capital world. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, the amendment is to require a minimum of net present value savings to be $950,000. Ready to vote?
And is this?
This is just on his amendment to require the minimum.
The vote is 3 in favor with Councilmember Stallman, Mayor Brinkman, and Councilmember Beckman voting no. The motion fails.
Okay. Now we're back to the original motion to approve the refinancing of the 2003 outstanding lease purchase. Any additional discussion? Okay. Ready to vote?
The vote is 4 in favor with Councilmember Cole and Councilmember Valdez voting no. The motion carries.
Okay, moving then to 8B, City Attorney.
This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, approving a license agreement with South Suburban Parks and Recreation District for use of a healthcare clinic at the Buck Community Recreation Center.
Okay. This is a second reading. The license with South Suburban Parks and Rec was initiated after review of other spaces and determining that the South Suburban Parks and Rec District Buck Center Community Rec Center offered the lowest cost, best location, and least amount of necessary tenant finish required to open an employee health clinic. The license agreement with South Suburban Parks and Rec will allow use of an existing clinic space used for providing health care and screening services to employees and their families and contain the city's overall benefit cost. The close location may also reduce lost work time for employees utilizing the clinic. The policy question here is, does council support the licensing of a health care clinic at the Buck Community Rec Center to provide employee health care and screening services to contain the city's overall health care costs? So I want to remind council that the issue we're dealing with here is the lease agreement with the Buck Center for the purposes of a health care clinic in the amount of $5,000 per year. Michael, did you want to add anything?
I just, one of the questions, and I realized it was $5,000 on an annual basis, but the question was, why were we not getting a better deal? And I think we communicated last time that it's standard for governments to charge governments. We even have cost allocation within our own organization. But I did talk to David Lorenz, who's the executive director for South Suburban, and it was the best deal that they were willing to offer us. They continue to pay the utilities. They're going to have additional cleanup costs with increased traffic in the lobby, and they had been renting that space out for other uses and trading off that revenue. And so can't remember what the 5,000 divided by 12 was for that. And I just want to reiterate that I think we got off somewhat in a, just from a policy standpoint, the decision of having a clinic is an administrative action within the purview of the manager relative to employee compensation out there. And we probably muddied the waters when we started the policy question during the council discussion, and then continued it even in the language of the summary statement today. The charter, excuse me, not the charter, the ordinance, the statutes require that council on a multi-year have a license for any lease that occurs. And so that's why this is before you. It does have a 60-day out. So technically, it probably doesn't even require the council approval for it, but because it's implied that it's multi-year, I think it's cleaner and more appropriate to bring it to you. But the issue here is, do you want to lease the square footage at $5,000 a year?
And then another, just a point of clarification. This is on the second reading.
Correct.
And we have the budget issues on the first reading coming up, the budget ordinance. So will you please reiterate what you stated last time regarding your 60-day out? Because this seems a little backwards.
So two things. One is we wouldn't execute until council approves the budget, which I can address in a second. And we do have a 60-day out clause. So if for some reason it's not working, that being the clinic, or we just decide that's not a direction that we want to go. The budget as presented to the council did not have costs associated with the clinic in it because it was a savings. So it was a $200,000 reduction out of the health care fund within the budget. So if council didn't approve the lease, then we would be requesting an amendment to the budget to increase out of the general fund by $200,000. So the request in policy question number 1 was solely, as council is aware, was for employee compensation, some retirement issues. I don't remember the exact details within it. but it was not associated with the healthcare component because that was a cost reduction, and we reduced the expenditure out of the general fund. And that's where I say I think we got, as Councilman Valdez pointed out during it, even the policy question wasn't as clear as it should have been. So we will learn from that and move on. But yes, we would not execute this until after the council has adopted the budget at second reading.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions for staff regarding this?
Well, just one more thing with that. This is going into effect, though, in November?
It is. The reason it's kind of out of sequence here is because there's physical work that has to be done, so we want to get it moving as quickly as possible. But to the mayor's question, we also don't want to get ahead of ourselves because until the council blesses...
I understand that, but when would the clinic open?
It depends upon when. I mean, we want to get it open as soon as possible, but it depends upon when we finally sign the lease, how quick the contractors can get in there. So I'm not...
I thought I heard some mention at some point of November.
It is our desire to get it open as soon as possible so that we can gain the savings as quickly as possible. I'm not going to commit to a time because I don't have all the control over contractors getting equipment in and those types of things. But we want to get it open sooner than later. That is why we had some discussion last time about additional costs in 2012 of a couple $100 relative to this lease request.
Thank you.
Jerry?
What equipment are you talking about?
We're setting up a clinic, so there's the normal equipment associated with going to see your doctor within that.
I thought that, but in the notes that we have here, it says that the equipment is already there, and that was one of the reasons for going to that location.
Yeah, we're moving a wall, and there's still some of the equipment materials that we need that is not exactly of what is currently in there for it. I think our net cost was about $23,000.
The move-in costs?
The equipment costs, the additional equipment costs.
Thank you.
I don't want to say it's going to open November 1st and it opened November 17th. I'm not trying to be vague here. I don't have a date. So.
Bill?
Michael, I know that there's a 60-day out clause here, but I'm also trying to understand this simply, if I have heard you. One is having a clinic is a component of the compensation budget that we looked at under the appropriation considerations. And knowing we would all love to see things come in under budget, or at least at budget, describe a bit of what's going to be the evaluative process to say whether a clinic is working or not. So is council tying into it being successful, or is the compensation budget such that you're going to come back and say, hey, we tried something and it didn't work? And if that's the case, I want to understand what the evaluative process is going to be.
Well, we're going to be tracking the utilization and the deferred costs or the cost savings by folks using our employees and families using the clinic as opposed to going to normal doctors and us paying those increased costs for it. So we'll have real numbers that we'll be tracking to ensure that those savings are there. And council's aware we're self-insured, and so we make modifications to that self-insurance plan on an annual basis to drive costs down, change employee behavior. Simple examples are getting employees to use generic drugs as opposed to brand name drugs. There's a substantial savings to use a generic drug, and so we incentivize employees because they have to then pay a higher copay on a brand name when there's a generic available. And we're constantly making those changes. This is a large version of that. Oh, sorry. It is. We'll move these mics so I'm not sitting in her lap. So this is a major shift in trying to change employee behavior and keep our costs low, and probably the most significant one. And we'll be tracking that. We'll be following the metrics on it, and we'll be updating the council on the success of the savings.
Knowing it often takes a while to have human behavior adopt to incentives and actually change in any way. We're really probably tying in for at least a longer period of time than 60 days because the margin of error in any statistics. Yeah. So this is something. So even though we have a 60-day out, we're not looking at this just being a 60-day or $1,000 commitment. We're probably looking at a $5,000 commitment.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, that's a good clarification. I'm not suggesting that come January we're going to notify South Suburban. I'm just stating that this is not a long-term, locked-in, multi-year thing. If we get to the middle of next year and for whatever reason we have not been successful, then we probably actually would change the program in a way that would incentivize more people to go than we would walk away from the program, because I do believe this will be successful and would be beneficial in containing our costs. But it's a matter of shift. Now, we have the ability, because we're self-insured, to have significant influence on behavior in terms of how other fees are charged to incentivize people to go there. So we can manipulate it to a greater degree than a normal market shift would demand.
And so trying to put it in simpler terms, for me anyway, even though we're self-insured, we have a provider network for which we have some level of discounts versus street rate.
Correct.
Okay. Also, one of the incentives we have in the program, just to help folks, is using generic drugs when they are available as an alternative to brand, because it's usually less cost. What we're looking at here is, in a sense, expanding our discounted provider network to include our own clinic, just like we provide an incentive for generic drugs versus brand names.
Yep, correct. Yep.
Thank
so
you.
we're getting overhead savings, we're not getting administrative costs, et cetera. So yes.
Any other questions, Peggy?
So I do have, in fact, I've sent the city manager 12 rather complicated questions.
I do, if I can, Peggy, just one quick moment. Just a point of clarification. We are not making a decision on the item in the budget on the clinic, the $200,000 savings.
Right, I know, okay. Well, I know, but they're related. So
okay.
Anyway, I'm not going to go into all those questions that I sent you, but I hope that we will discuss them rigorously at a study session, those kinds of issues. But just one piece of the question that I sent you, we're going to be open 6 hours, 2 different days, is that right? 6 in the morning one day and...
I don't recall the exact detail, but...
Is that approximate?
Sure.
I mean...
Sure.
And so we're hoping for at least 50% claim use through that. One of my questions was, what kind of use Loveland had and how many hours are they open? So they're at 54%. They were after 12 months, I think, use. But they're open 30 hours a week. That's a whopping big spread to get that many people, and we're not getting anywhere near that big a spread to be open. So
it's not necessarily apples and apples, and I would remind staff or council that it's staff's responsibility to administer this, and if we need to be open more hours, we will extend those hours. I don't know what the details around how they set up their schedules, their meetings. That's part of what I was communicating in the email, is that information is taken in a vacuum, because we don't know whether they set up 1 hour times with them, or are they 20-minute times, what is the basis for how those times are. We want this to be successful. We'll be fluctuating and working with the third-party provider to ensure that we are getting our employees in, they're getting scheduled, they're not having to wait till the next week. And the greater success we have, obviously, the more hours we may need to have it open. You start small with it and you open it up. If ultimately we get a higher percentage, we'll expand that. If we ultimately partner with another government entity, we'll need more hours for that. So that's one of the great things about this, is it's very fluid in that sense of being able to respond to the customer's needs. So we'll be working through all of those logistical issues.
Any other questions? Okay, this is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing, and if anyone wants to come down and address council on this issue, you can do so at this time. Please state your name and address, and there's approximately 4 minutes. I do have 3 people signed up on the roster, and I will call their names. I do want to make a point of clarification. I am not trying to discourage the citizens from coming down and being heard. What I do want to remind everyone is that it is general policy for council that when issues are raised in a public hearing, we typically refer those to staff for follow-up information. And if in the case of this particular instance, we are on a first reading, that information can be returned back. We are on a second reading. I would then say that in terms of a second reading, if it is a question that staff feels comfortable being able to give an answer, some of these require additional information and follow-up. We don't want to give the wrong information. We don't want to give the wrong answers. And I think it's wiser for us to be judicious about our answers that we hand out than quick. So if it is something that either council or staff feel comfortable addressing, we will do so. If not, please respect that we would like to get that information back to you in a timely fashion. So we'll go ahead with the public hearing. Jim Dubose.
Madam Mayor, council members, my name is Jim Dubose. I live in District 4. I've read the agenda communication on this subject, and I've read the ordinance, and it just don't seem right to me. It's just out of kilter. There's too much information I think we should have, which we don't have. In one instance, first of all, you brought up the $5,000 a year that South Suburban wants to charge us for that little bitty hole in the wall over there for a year. I didn't hear who you talked to, Michael, at South Suburban.
Dave Lorenz.
You talked to Lorenz?
Yes.
Dave Lorenz. He's certainly aware that South Suburban bought that piece of dirt that building's sitting on from the city of Littleton for $1. Surely he could be a little more accommodating to somebody who's dealt with him in a very accommodating way. Another thing is it looks like we got 6 hours a week in this clinic. Monday and Wednesday, Monday morning and Wednesday afternoon. What if I come in sick on Thursday morning? Do I wait till next Monday to get attention? That isn't answered here, and I think it's a pertinent question. It says that this little space over there has equipment that can be cost shared. At what cost? Doesn't say. Shouldn't we know that? And then it says, this is one of the whereases in the ordinance. It says the city can save approximately $150,000 to $250,000. That's quite a spread, even if it is preceded by approximately. Where'd they come up with this number? Is this picked out of the air? Or did somebody actually figure it out some way? It says the city will be contracting with Care Here LLC to run this thing. Well, what are they going to charge us? $500,000 a year? Is that what it is? Or $50,000 a year? Do we know? Shouldn't it be in here if we do know? Again, I just think there are too many questions unanswered in this thing that should be answered before we enter into this. Any questions?
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
The next person is Carol Brezak.
I'm Carol Brezak, and I live in District 4. I have some issues with this problem. I know this is a policy question to spend $5,000, but when you say yes to that policy decision, then you've opened the door for this wellness center, which we really haven't heard a whole lot about. I generally watch your meetings at home, and when I hear topics brought up, I start thinking about what questions I would ask if I was sitting up there in your position. And sometimes the questions get answered, sometimes they don't need to be answered. Enough other information comes forward. But with this particular issue, there were several questions I had in my mind that are still unanswered. And maybe you have the answers, but it just hasn't become aware to the public in the open meetings. The city anticipates savings of $200,000 after 50% utilization. What does the 50% utilization actually mean? Is it the total of the number of people insured? Is it the total number of employees? Is it the total amount of services provided, or based on what was provided the year before? I haven't heard what that 50% is based on, and I would like to understand that. The other question I have, is this program funded entirely with the insurance premiums that are paid by the employees, or is there a taxpayer contribution to fund the wellness center? The issue of rent, it sticks in my craw, not so much that it's $5,000, because in the big scheme of things, it's not a whole lot of money. But when we get $1 a year from South Suburban for all the land that their building sits on, there's something that's really wrong here. We either need to hire their negotiator to negotiate for us, or go back in and see what we can do about this. It's just, Dave Lorenz comes to this council with regularity and wants money from you that I paid to you. When I look at my property tax bill, more of my money goes to South Suburban than comes to this city. But yet Dave Lorenz is up here asking for my money again. And you've got your hand in this pocket, and he has his hand in this pocket, but he's also wanting to put his hand in my other pocket. And I wish you would remember this the next time he comes forward, that he has taxpayer money. Now, we have open fund money and conservation trust fund money. I understand that that's a great thing to share with them. But when it comes to the tax dollars that I pay to this city, I want them spent on the city government, not in South Suburban. So if Dave Lorenz didn't make a habit of coming up here, it probably would have been one of those things that just went over my head and said, oh, well, we need a new negotiator. I'm wondering what other models were considered before this one was decided upon. Why was this one recommended over others? I also wonder about the timing. Is this the right time to be making this kind of a decision? Because we all know that when government provides something, it very rarely goes away. It generally gets bigger. considering the timing again. I think about Obamacare. What does that do to the whole scheme of insurance? Is being self-insured really the way to go under Obamacare? I don't know that anyone really knows right now. I do know there's some minor changes in 2013, but the big changes are coming in 2014. Has Obamacare been looked at in conjunction with this wellness center that's being talked about? I would like to see more in-depth information before the $5,000 is approved, because once that $5,000 is approved, it's going to be spent. We've already heard move walls. We've got a 60-day period where we can rescind this. So are we going to withhold any of those remodel changes and equipment purchases until that 60-day period is up? I don't know what the hurry is. The other thing I thought of it when I was listening to council talk about this is location. We have Doctors Care right down the road. I don't know if whoever was making this recommendation looked at Doctors Care as a possible other facility and cost sharing. I guess that's it on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. The next person on the roster is Linda Newfinke.
Good evening. This is the second time I'm here during Conflict Resolution Month.
Welcome.
And we don't like it.
Don't start a fight tonight.
My name is Linda Knupicki. I live in the 4th District. I'm here to urge you to postpone any action on leasing the Buck Center for an employee clinic until such time when you could be presented a business case for this program. I have a long list, and yes, it's longer than yours, Peggy, of general questions regarding this potential program, and no need to respond, First question is, do you have any data to support the assertion that this will save the city $150,000 to $250,000 per year? The second question is, has your claim data been analyzed? When you say 50% of claims and 50% of utilization, these are two separate concepts in healthcare. And then what type of office visits do you expect on a routine basis, such as physicals, 10-minute visits, 30-minute visits, and so forth? And how many visits do you expect to provide per week, per month, per year? And then also, what are the city's expenses affiliated with the program? And then the ordinance says you can increase your level of service. What information will be used to determine whether to increase the level of service, and who makes those decisions to increase the level of service? And the ordinance says that the city agrees to furnish the rooms with equipment. Does the city have cost estimates, which I heard Michael say $23,000, but in my experience it could easily run into the hundreds and thousands of dollars, which are not necessarily factored into this ordinance. It's my understanding that you are approving not only the lease, but the cost of the equipment affiliated and written into the ordinance. And another question is, does the city have enough employees to justify the expense? And with the proposed increases in budget outlays for 2013 and with potential reduction in services, does it make sense to add a whole new services here? And is this program in the budget? And we did hear it was in the revenue side, but not necessarily in the expense side. So if so, why aren't you making a policy decision to fund the program first? And I understand that'll be coming at a later date. So, and another question is, why is this being pushed so quickly? And that we don't know. And then another question is, how are pharmaceuticals going to work? The staff report says that the prescription costs are a pass-through. How is this different than what's done currently? And have you considered that the pharmaceuticals could potentially be more through Care Here than what you're currently paying? And how does Care Here staff their clinics? Will there be nurse practitioners? Will there be DOs? Will there be MDs? Will there be physician assistants? And what type of supervision will there be? And then how do you know that the city is actually getting quality care? And then if the cost of the program is $250,000 in the first year, is the I mean, what is the cost, and is the intent to push the cost down to the employees, and what is that number? And it could potentially be a difficult sell. And then, Bruce, you'd mentioned the break-even analysis. Has that been completed, and have competitive bids been solicited? And did the city look at audited financials and references for Care Here LLC, and has the due diligence been done? And has the and can you, as a council person, use the clinic? And can retirees use the clinic? Can I use the clinic? So in conclusion, there are too many questions to support this lease and this program at this time. Yes, you're only approving a $5,000 lease plus the cost of equipment to furnish the place, but I urge you to make informed decisions about this program and undertake a process where you approve the program first and then approve the lease. I'm not against this, but I just haven't seen the rationale behind all of this. So thank you, and have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, no one else has signed up, but if somebody would like to come down and speak, I don't see any hands. Marty, come on down.
Thank you, Council. My name is Marty Brezak. I live in District 4. I'll stick to the question that you're going to be voting on today. The way I understood this proposal or this policy statement was that this was going to be supported by the employee premiums. Why is the $5,000 coming out of the general fund? Why isn't it coming out of the $5,000 worth of the employee premiums? And that would include also the moving of the walls, the buying of equipment, and everything else associated, because this was supposed to be revenue neutral to the citizens. It was going to be benefiting the employees at no cost to the citizens. So why are we getting tagged for a $5,000 lease agreement, which is just the first step in this entire process? Please consider that when you vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else? Jose?
Jose Trujillo, 5574 South Huron, District 2, which everybody just loves in this town, right? I have a bad feeling about this. I don't know exactly just where we're going. If it's called a part of a wellness program, you know, it's going to continue and it's going to grow. But right now, I haven't heard of any numbers, great numbers from the staff, how many of our employees are going to partake in this. Most generally, the insurance companies that you have pretty much take care of medicines, etc. They go from their doctor will recommend someplace else. The short hours that you'll be able to get in and get any of these prescriptions doesn't sound good to me. You know, it's like one of them said, you know, if you get sick on Thursday, what are you going to wait till Monday to get something? So I just think it's not very well defined, and I certainly I'm not for this at all, so I just want to throw in my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. Anybody else? Norm?
Good evening again. Norm Brown, same address and same hat. Jerry.
I still like it.
I got it from my cousin in Missouri, something about a farm service. Directly to the lease, I heard Michael say that in his discussion with Mr. Lorenz, part of the justification was utilities cleaning up the lobby, additional traffic, and so on. I guess it occurs to me that 12 hours a week, which I believe is what is scheduled to start this clinic, is low. It's less than a third of an average work week. And Michael spoke about the ability to create incentives, which I would think one of the first would be greater access, more time. If the lease is fixed at $5,000, even if the hours of the clinic go up to 30 hours a week, whatever level seems necessary in a trial period or ultimately to get the participation that will create the savings you anticipate, then I think that should be understood up front. But if your hours triple, I don't believe South Suburban should come back and say, okay, we've got to triple the cost. And I don't know if any of you have seen the lease, but you heard tonight some of the factors that contribute to the amount of $5,000 initially. So I'm constraining myself to those details of the lease. Perhaps you know, but it seems rational that one of the incentives would be greater access. I know most frequently in recent years, my wife and I have gone to walk-in clinics on weekends, emergency care and urgent care and such. I'm sure the city employees have similar things with their families. It's easy to schedule sort of the routine things, but some of the costly things, separated shoulders and so on, occur after hours. So, thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Anybody else? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. No? Paul? Close the public hearing, and I need a motion. Hello?
I move to approve the ordinance on second reading authorizing the city to enter into the license agreement with South Suburban Parks and Recreation District for the use of a healthcare clinic at the Buck Community Recreation Center.
Need a second? No second. Motion dies for lack of a second. Item 11A. City Attorney?
This is an ordinance to be known as the annual appropriation bill for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, Jefferson, State of Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2013 and ending December 31, 2013.
Okay, this is ordinance on first reading of the annual budget for all of city funds. The annual budget was reviewed by staff over several weeks in City Council during two budget sessions held on September 10th and 11th of this year. This communication presents the 2013 annual appropriation ordinance to Council on first reading. During the 2013 budget review process, the details associated with this ordinance were discussed. There were 43 policy questions asked of Council. Most of the Council questions were approved, with a few denied or requiring modifications. There was an additional expenditure added to the 2013 budget. The Council communique does go into the detail on those. So, City Manager, did you have anything, or Doug, anything?
Doug may have something. I do not. Thank you.
Okay. And just as I think what we'll do is let staff go ahead and make a presentation, and then we'll take a short recess and come back for council questions.
Okay, great. First of all, Councilmember Stallman had some questions about the budget today, and I handed out a spreadsheet for the council to answer his questions, and also there's a handout for the public up on the back table. So hopefully that answers Councilmember Stallman's questions, and I'd be happy to answer any more questions from the council regarding those numbers. And I think Mayor actually hit on most of the highlights for the 2013 appropriations bill. Council did discuss 43 different policy questions over 2 extensive evenings. And this is what we have at this point in time. We have tabled some of the policy questions for further discussion. Some of them were removed from the budget altogether, and then the rest of them have been incorporated in the proposed budget ordinance that you have in front of you tonight. The total 2013 annual appropriation is $72.3 million, and that's 2.8% higher than the 2012 adopted budget. The largest fund, the general fund, is $1.4 million, or 3% higher than the 2012 adopted budget. But one thing to note is the 2012 planned general fund revenues are higher than the proposed appropriations amount, and those revenues are projected to be $48.8 million in 2013, and the expenditures $48.75, so slightly higher than expenditures. As the mayor pointed out, the second public hearing and the second reading of the ordinance would be on October 16th.
Thank you. So before we get into the discussion on this, I think a quick 5 to 10 minute break would be in order. We'll resume at 9:10. We are in recess. A and council, this is a public hearing. First we'll have questions from council. Council, any questions on the budget? Bruce?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Okay.
I think the comment that I want to make is, since about 2007, it's been the technique to get through each year to use the fund balance from one year to build up then the funds going into the next year. And, you know, that's one of those things that you can do a couple, 3 times, but you really can't do it as a practice because you begin to create an organization that depends on a fund balance from the previous year. And things like an inflation rate change or cost of doing business or a certain number of employees don't leave that you anticipated, and suddenly you find that money isn't forthcoming, but what you've done is create an organization that expected it. So it's just not good planning. This is the first year since 2007 where this projected revenue in 2013 and the projected expenditures in 2013 match without the influx of the fund balance or leftovers from 2012. And I think it's a heck of an accomplishment. And I think it really sets us in a better and certainly more stable position to be able to look to 2014 or 15, because we don't know what's coming down the pike, but everything that we can see is that it's going to be tough years, and that the cost of doing the services we're used to doing is going to go up, and our expenditures will go up, but the revenue may stay stable at best. So I'm really proud that we have stopped what I think is a risky practice that's been going on since 2007 to come with what is a structurally balanced budget.
Thank you.
Phil, did you have a comment?
Just adding on to what Bruce mentioned, what it does is allow us to focus on the potential imbalance that happens in around maintenance of our capital infrastructure that we have, and that will be one of our challenges is going forward. So as Bruce has mentioned, we're going to have some tough items to deal with, but what this does is by having that balance in the general fund on going forward, it allows us to actually focus on where our challenge is going to be.
Council, any other questions, comments? Okay, this is a public hearing, so I will open that public hearing. I have a roster. Carol Brizek has signed up to speak. Carol? There's no one else on the roster, but if you do want to speak after Carol's finished, then please just raise your hand.
I thought you were going to invite me to spend as much time as I wanted.
You have 4 minutes.
Okay, I'm Carol Brizak, live in the 4th District. And most of these are just little comments about the budget. First of all, the process. After being involved and going through budget hearings for the last several years, this was a much better process, I thought. Commend you for that. It just for a whole variety of reasons. I think it gets council out of the way of micromanaging down to the dollar, what's spent, or how many mattresses need to be purchased, or how many forks in the drawer. And I just thought it was a less painful process for those of us watching. I hope it was for you too. One of the observations that I did make, though, in comment or in light of what I think Bruce Beckman has said earlier about the budget getting more difficult year after year, most of what was in front of you were expenditures, which I thought was a little odd. But I also wondered what was in the budget that was cut in order to accommodate those extra expenses. And that's the part of the budget process that I don't know, because I didn't go through each line item to see where things have been cut. And that gets to a new way of thinking as a citizen, probably as a council as well, that at some point you let go of that and you trust your manager and staff to do what they're supposed to do and be good servants of the community and our taxpayer payments. The online timesheet interface really doesn't bother me, but I also wonder about how you're going to verify something like that. And I was thinking, I remember a county employee that lived close to me that used to spend a lot of afternoons at his home, but then his truck would leave to go clock out. So if people can go on, on the internet and punch in and punch out, is there going to be any kind of a system to verify that they are where they're supposed to be when they're punching in and out? So I guess trust but verify on that one. Granicus, which you guys know I love, allows me to stay home, watch, read, sew, everything at the same time.
Popcorn?
No. It's just said from the general fund, and I'm assuming that it's from the PEG fund, but I would like verification that that's where that money's coming from. Do we know?
It's general fund.
Oh, so we still have a PEG fund, correct?
Yes.
Is there a reason why it's not coming out of the PEG fund rather than the general fund? You can answer it later.
Yeah.
The e-ticketing software, I'm just wondering if we know of other municipalities that have used this. Have they used it for a long time? Do they like it? Have they abandoned it if for any reason? Just questions. The storm drains, which I know you're going to get to, but I'm going to make a comment here. It's been ridiculously low for a long time. I really hate to see it bump up as much as it's being bumped up in light of all the sewer increases we've had in the past. And I guess it's more of a caution that maybe we get ahead of some of that so we don't have increases that large for people that are on fixed incomes, my mother being one. Heck, I'm on one now. The $15,000 that's going to the chamber, you're going to ask them to do some specific things to market Littleton. Do you know what they'll be, how you will measure if they were effective or not, so that you know whether or not you want to fund it in the following year? And then I've just got two, I guess, overall things I would like to talk about. One is the Capital Improvements Fund. With Littleton being mostly built out, which you all are painfully aware of, the revenues have kind of plateaued. And for us to expect any real increase in revenue is going to be tough to think that we're going to get them. The school district by law has to take a percentage of their per pupil revenue and put it in their capital improvement fund. It's never enough, but at least it's appropriated money that the school board can't get their hands on, the teachers union can't get their hands on. It's dedicated for capital improvement. I know you can't make a decision for future boards, but it sure might go a long way if you had a discussion, philosophical discussion, about what percentage of the city's revenues you think should go into a decent capital improvement fund over the years so that we end up with our roads paved the way they need to be, streetlights where they need to be, these kinds of things. And if you had the discussion, then it's on the record and it might guide future councils. So I think to get real simple, what I'm saying is you've got 100% of the money, 75% of it may go to operations and 25% may have to go to capital improvement. I'm guessing, it's just numbers. You guys with your staff might be able to figure out what might make sense, and then it might help future councils plan for capital improvements. The other point, and it's probably going to be a difficult one, but it's with Inglewood. It's almost as irritating as Dave Lorenz coming and asking you for money, is when Inglewood charges you use tax on our sewer plant. I know we're not the only government entity that they charge use tax, but for crying out loud, it doesn't make sense. So next time you all meet with the city of Inglewood, why don't you iron that one out and save us a little bit of money? Thanks.
Thank you, Carol. Anybody else? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. I need a motion, please.
I move the proposed ordinance approving the 2012 annual appropriation ordinance be approved on first reading with the second reading to occur in 2 weeks.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Council, any discussion? Seeing none, ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay. 11B, City Attorney.
This is an ordinance establishing the tax levy of 6.662 mils to defray the cost of municipal government and pay debt service of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson for the city's fiscal year beginning January 1, 2013 and ending December 31, 2013.
Okay, the city's mill levy must be certified by each county by December 15th. Our mill levy remains the same as last year. The tax mill levy, or the tax levy / mill levy, provides for the assessment and collection of property taxes. The estimated amount of the property tax revenues in the 2013 budget is $4,080,800. Did I get that right? This is approximately the same as the 2012 estimated property tax collections. The policy questions in the budget have been reviewed by council, and the information has been made available at the Bemis Library, City of Littleton website, and the City Clerk's Office for public review. I mention that because this is a taxing issue. So, are there any questions, council? Okay, this is a public hearing, so seeing no questions from council and staff, I don't think we need any. Public hearing is open. I have a roster, and there is no one signed up. Does anybody care to speak? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing, and I need a motion.
I move that the proposed ordinance approving the 2012 tax mill levy ordinance be approved on first reading with the second reading to occur in 2 weeks.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Bruce?
I just have a couple questions. We've been at this level for as long as I can remember. And so my question would be, and it's based on the discussion that we had previously that we're looking into the future in revenues, when this was at 6.66 years ago versus the 6.66 now after consumer price index changes, housing values, devaluations, et cetera, how big is the delta from year to year that this 6.66 has been for us, and is it something that in the future we should look to perhaps making a change?
We can certainly get its purchasing power, in essence, its shift since 92, or which I believe is the last time that it was changed. And obviously this requires a vote of the people to change. And so as part of the ongoing capital discussion that we've been having, this property tax mills will be one of the things we'll be discussing with you.
That'd be great, because I think that's going to be part of the information exchange with the community.
Absolutely.
That we're going to have.
Yes.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Can I ask for a related piece of information when we discuss that? the property values go up. So it's not as though something's not going up too. So if we can have comparison also of that, and of course we've grown a bit over that time, so we'd have to have a little complicated analysis.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. There's two variables. It's the mills and the assessed values. So we're on it.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries.
11C, City Attorney.
This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending provisions of the city code regarding stormwater and flood management utility fees.
Okay, this is a first reading and a public hearing. A 25% increase is proposed in stormwater utility fees. For a single-family residence, the annual fee will increase from $24 to $30 a year, which is $2.50 a month. For a vacant residential lot, the yearly fee will increase from $6 to $7.50 annually. The multifamily residential, commercial, and industrial properties, the yearly fee will increase from $50 to $62.50 for an acre of landscaped land, and from $200 to $250 for an acre of developed rooftop or pavement. The undeveloped land fee will increase from $5 to $6.25 per acre annually. Even under the proposed fee rate schedule, Littleton stormwater utility fees will be among the lowest in the metropolitan area. The revised fees would become effective in 2013. The existing stormwater utility fees have funded the program for many years, and if the fees are not increased, the program will continue, but it will take longer to complete projects or mitigate existing drainage problems or flooding threats. Many residents have contacted staff and council with drainage problems, and some have been waiting many years for funds to become available to address these concerns. Staff, Charlie, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make 2 points. Number one, this increase is the first time in 27 years since this utility was created to have a fee increase. The increase amounts to slightly more than the cost of a postage stamp per single-family residence per month, 50 cents per month, although some of us don't use postage stamps nearly as much as we used to. The other thing with this money, the additional amount of revenue raised, which is about $120,000 a year, 100% of it will go directly into storm drainage projects, concrete. You have in your packet a list of concrete replacement that needs to be done in the city for drainage purposes. This is a list of everybody that has called us in the past several years. That's where this money will go. None of it goes to engineering or administration. It all goes into actual concrete and storm drainage projects. That's all I'd like to say.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions? Bruce?
Charlie, just a comment, and it flies in the face of not raising taxes, and making that pledge as best we can to not raise taxes. You've given us a list of projects that if I lived in some of those neighborhoods and that was my project and it's continually being ignored or not funded, that affects the quality of my neighborhood. And so I'm concerned that we are failing. I mean, it's wonderful that we're doing what we're doing the way we do it, but are we doing enough? If this long list of projects represent a shortcoming in the neighborhood, who else can they turn to get it resolved but us?
We are the ones they turn to, yes, Councilman. I would also like to point out to you that you can add more money and we can do more projects, but what I'm trying to avoid is more administration in order to manage those projects. And I don't want to have to add staff in order to say, let's do more work. This is what we can manage with existing staff. Otherwise, we get bigger, I would have to add more employees. And that's what I'm actually trying to avoid, is making sure that all this money goes directly in to physical work and not administration. I hope that addresses your question.
It does, but it probably doesn't answer. It's like the pothole in front of your house. We're the only ones that can fix it for someone.
Yeah, we got a monopoly on that business, kind of.
Any other questions? Okay, this is a public hearing. So I will open the public hearing. There is no one on the roster. If there's anyone who wants to come down and address council on this issue, please do so now. Jose?
Jose Trujillo, 5574 South Huron, District 2. I noticed on the list of proposed major storm drainage improvements, now for years the cemetery has approached council and Mr. Bloston, and it has been acknowledged that we have a problem on Ridge Road. And I do not see that entered in on any of the proposed improvements, so I just would like to know if that's going to get done.
There's
someday.
an item 3, Ridge Road west of South Prince storm sewer. Is that it?
Yeah, the cemetery project is number 3 on the list.
Okay, Charlie, I'm sorry.
And let there be a note that some citizen comments are addressed very quickly.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, I need a motion. I'll close the public hearing, and I need a motion, please.
And notwithstanding Carol's comments about the level of increase, but it is at the level of 50 cents per month. I would say there's going to be a lot more hot air exchanged in Washington these days that are going to impact households a lot more than what this might be. And given that, I move to approve the ordinance increasing the stormwater utility fees be approved on first reading and a public hearing be scheduled for October 16, 2012.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this. Any discussion, council? I do have a comment, and this is pretty much the same comment I made in the budget hearings, that I think this is becoming, certainly the list is quite lengthy, and it's becoming a pretty constant complaint from the community as everything does age, and frankly, we're all driving bigger cars, and we're driving them more, and so this kind of stuff going in and out of your driveways and different things like that is, I mean, I guess this doesn't apply to that, but never mind. No, but my point is that this is the type of thing where we have an obligation to stay in front of this stuff and stay on top of it. And I would rather us look at this on even a every other year basis to evaluate whether we're able to execute in a timely fashion these repairs than to create this very long list and try to hold a rate. I mean, because it's not a lot of money. It's 50 cents a month, and it's going to get a lot of work done. And if we need to evaluate that on a more frequent basis, I think that that's appropriate based on the return we're going to get from that value. That's my only comment.
At least we know it's being spent in our neighborhood.
Exactly. So, okay, council, ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries.
I went to curbs and gutters for a minute there, didn't I? Okay. Okay. Yes, we have an executive session. So, Mayor Pro Tem Stallman, would you please read us into exec?
I move that City Council will conduct an executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute Section 24-6-402 sub 4 sub B and 24-6-402 sub 4 sub E for legal advice and informing negotiators relating to Sterling Ranch sewer, as well as Colorado Revised Statute Section 24-6-402 sub 4 sub B for legal advice relating to the medical marijuana lawsuit, and involved or included in the executive session will be City Council, City Manager Penny, City Attorney Crawford, and Public Works Director Bloston.
And we will not return to the meeting, but we will to conduct any business. So that's it. I can't adjourn until after the exec session. So we will now move
Second
to
to the
exec.
motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have to vote. Very nice. Thank you, Phil.
Five votes.
Okay, yes. Ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries.
All right.
Sorry, Deb.